Hello, my dears. My name is Joanna, and I'll welcome you to Johanna Takonis, the Deconstruction of C-PTSD podcast. In this episode, we will talk about PTSD breaking out. As PTSD is pretty dormant until it breaks out, most people don't know they have it until then. They only have minimal symptoms, and it doesn't appear too bad. That is why many people have trouble believing they have PTSD and won't get any help until it broke out and hell broke loose. It's important that we shed as much light as possible on this situation, as the misconception leads to many false assumptions and actions. So let us talk about it. I think it is important to clarify what it means to have PTSD, what happens at the breakout, when it happens, and why it happens usually. Many people confuse the extreme symptoms of the outbreak as being PTSD. It is not. It is what you want to avoid as much as possible in real life. It is a cold war becoming a hot war, so to speak. But the fighting was going on for a long while. It was just not so overt and loud. You can't just ignore it anymore, if you ever did. If the trauma happened when you were a child, most likely you weren't even aware that this conflict within you is not normal or good. How could you? You never learned it any other way. This is your normal, as wrong as this normal is. Which is why treating this sort of trauma is so much harder than if you experience it later in life. There are many people who believe they are healed or even cured just because the symptoms became dormant again. But this just means the breakout was reversed, not that the PTSD is gone. It is just quieter now. What does it mean to have PTSD? You see, PTSD isn't really the triggers, flashbacks, visions, insomnia, and the like. It is about your brain having suffered a trauma it cannot overcome. It is that simple. You can have it and walk through your whole life without ever finding out you have it. Either because your natural way of handling it worked so well, the trauma was isolated enough, or the like. It is extremely unlikely so. Because usually if your brain finds a trauma too hard to overcome, it is usually rather significant. And with age, the PTSD grows. Depending on how much you feed it, it does more or less. That is why ignoring it is such a bad idea. Yes, you can do it while you're younger, with the symptoms still being relatively mild, but it really bites you in the butt later on. Doesn't mean it is hopeless later on, but it is definitely easier when you are younger. Which leads us to the question, what happens during a breakout? Similar to a bone that can withstand a lot of pressure and all, it will break if too much is applied. That is basically what happens at a breakout. Whatever measures the brain took to keep the boxes of trauma contained failed and chaos ensued. Maybe a better example would be opening the garage door and now it can't be closed anymore. You still support and now you have to try to calm the situation as soon as possible so you can act in the best way possible. That is not to be confused with being healed or cured. Since this breakout usually comes out of nowhere, it escalates before measurement can be made to reduce the fallout. Therefore, the symptoms will escalate quite a bit before they are contained. So when does it happen? Most of the time, in what I accumulated, in the 50s. Around the time of midlife crisis. Maybe it is even connected, but there is no solid information on that end at this time. I don't know why, but usually then all the accumulated baggage becomes too much. Memories start to resurface, weird dreams were being had, and so on. It is unclear why exactly in this age span, but that is the breaking point or starting breaking point when it happens. Or it is the breakout of a trauma thought healed, the second wave so to speak. If it happens in younger ages, then it usually because of extreme external pressure, a strong trauma, a very strong trigger activated, or a new trauma, even if that trauma is not enough to cause a PTSD by itself. Lastly, what does this often lead to? To a few things. One is ignoring the PTSD way too soon. Some don't even get help because the symptoms go away or become weak enough for them to ignore. This is a time bomb just waiting to go off. Others do get help and manage to keep the symptoms down with therapy, pills, or whatever, and thinking they are healed and that they can go on with a normal life. But this is also just a time bomb, applacating the beast and thinking this will end well. This misinformation needs to be stopped, as it is a huge risk and causes a lot of harm. It is crucial to understand that you still have PTSD unless the trauma no longer affects you, if you can talk with ease about it, without it causing you issues. Otherwise, it is still there and you are not cured. That is also the reason why I say I'm cured and not healed, as I am free of it, while others just manage to be free of the symptoms. That was it for today's episode. I have to say, this week the heat really got into me. I'm usually fine with hot weather and the like, but this week it really made working hard. Quick reminder to stay hydrated and take good care of yourself. And as always, if you have any questions or feedback and the like, please let me know at contactme@johannatakonis.com. More information and transcripts you can find as usually under johannatakonis.com/podcast. Information regarding therapy you can find under johannatakonis.com/therapy, and links are in the description. I hope to see you next time. Watch yourself and have a wonderful time.